Hey guys, tonight we sail out into dark, open water, where the air is heavy, the waves whisper secrets, and a shadowy ship creeps along the horizon. There's no moon, just the glow of distant lightning flickering through clouds like a warning. And then, up it goes, a flag, torn, black as ink. You squint. Black as ink. There's nothing written on it. No country, no emblem. Just emptiness. It flaps like a whisper that you're not going home. You're aboard a merchant vessel loaded with barrels of rum and salted cod. Your pockets empty, but your hopes high. And now, some stranger just raised a flag that might mean surrender, die, or maybe worse. Pirates are near, and they're not shooting yet. That's the terrifying part. You've probably seen the skull and crossbones before, on Halloween costumes or cartoon maps with a dotted line. But back in the early 1700s, when golden doubloons clinked and ships creaked louder than your knees on leg day, that flag didn't just mean pirates. It meant don't even try. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The black flag rises again, and your heart stutters like it skipped a line. But wait, why no gunfire yet? Why isn't the pirate ship firing warning shots or yelling threats? The truth is, pirates didn't want to fight you. Not really. That flag up there, it was their most powerful weapon. And not because it could hurt you, but because it could convince you to not even try. Let's start with the big picture. The golden age of piracy, roughly 1650 to 1730, wasn't all wild sword fights and cannon smoke. It was a weird, greasy blend of economics, politics, and tired sailors who were just over it. Imagine floating in a leaking bathtub for weeks, smelling like pickled onions and feet, only to find another ship and think, ugh, are we really doing this today? And so came the strategy, terror by flag. When a pirate crew spotted a merchant ship, they didn't yell, "Let's fight!" No, they quietly approached, silent, sometimes hiding behind an island or trailing behind like a shadow. They waited until the merchant noticed them, and then they raised the black flag. It was plain at first, just black cloth, but that black square was like a knife in your gut. Like calling a hurricane cheeky. We are pirates. You already lost. The name stuck. Raising it early gave the target a chance to surrender. Not every pirate used the same. No cannonballs. That's where it gets interesting. Just toss over your cargo. In the early days, there was no universal pirate flag. You'd live. It wasn't like it was a negotiation. Someone handed out standard issue banners of a villainous orientation. Now, don't get too comfy. Pirate captains made their own flags. It had a twin, someone in their crew. The red stitched one together between raids. We'll get there soon, and these flags weren't subtle. Back on your ship, your captain squints through a spyglass. There's a murmur among the crew. Nobody knows if this is that kind of pirate, the ones who will board you, loot your cheese wheels, and vanish, or the ones who will tie you to the mast and light the deck on fire just for fun. Because not all pirates were the same. Some were ex-Navy, sharp and strategic. Others were just chaotic freelancers of the sea, high on stolen rum and dreams of quick riches. The pirate captain now stands on the forecastle. You don't see him, but you imagine him. Tall, leather coat flapping, beard like he wrestled a lion and lost. He doesn't shout. He just lets the flag speak for him. Historians still argue whether the black flag originated with pirates or was borrowed from naval signals. Some say it began with French buccaneers who used black banners during sieges in the Caribbean. Others think it was just a dark joke, a reverse of the white flag of surrender. Either way, it stuck. It worked. Here's the trick. Pirates weren't dumb, far from it. They knew sea battles were expensive, cannonballs weren't free, neither were replacement masts or surgeons with saws and buckets. So why fight if you didn't have to? Why risk it? Imagine you're the pirate now. You and your crew are chasing a slow, fat merchant ship. You're hungry, your powder's damp, and your first mate won't stop complaining about the weevils in his biscuit. So instead of wasting shots, you hoist the black flag. You're not attacking yet. You're making an offer. Give up now. It'll go easier. That moment, the flag rising, is all about psychology. You want the enemy captain to panic, to imagine every awful pirate tale he's ever heard. You want his crew to sweat and mutter. Because if they hesitate, if they wait, and you catch them, then things get worse. Sometimes, if a ship resisted, pirates would raise a different flag next. A red one. Solid red. No designs. Just blood. It meant no quarter given. No mercy. No survivors. And yes, we'll talk more about that special horror show in the next section. But tonight, it's just black. That plain flag might have been made from sailcloth or stitched together from stolen uniforms. Sometimes it had patches. Sometimes it looked almost elegant. But it always felt like a threat. Pirates didn't always need skulls or bones to send a message, just that dark cloth on the breeze. And if you're wondering what it felt like to see it, imagine your phone suddenly rings at 3 a.m. and the voice just says, "We're coming." That's the vibe. Here's a quirky twist. Some pirates believed that the black flag had mystical power. One French privateer reportedly whispered prayers to it before a raid. Another refused to wash it, claiming the blood of the last crew gave it spirit. Probably smelled like toe fungus and sadness, but sure, magic. You, on the merchant ship, aren't thinking about history. You're watching the horizon. The black flag's up. Your captain still hasn't decided what to do. If he gives up, you might live. If he resists and loses, pirates might chain you to an oar, or worse, press you into their crew. No, seriously, impressment was a thing. They'd offer you a job you couldn't refuse, complete with a cutlass and a moldy hammock, because pirates didn't just want loot. They needed hands to sail, to load cannons, to sing badly in swab decks. Suddenly, a shout. The pirate ship is coming closer. Still no shots fired. Just the slow, creeping pressure of that flag waving like a death rattle. You realize it's a message and the clock is ticking. The merchant captain finally decides. He lowers his sails. A signal of surrender. And just like that, the pirate ship slows. Hooks get ready. Not a single cannon fired. You live, for now. Tomorrow the flag might go up again and someone else won't be so lucky. But you just survived the most silent, most terrifying robbery of your life. And it all began with a piece of black cloth whispering across the sky. So next time you see the Jolly Roger printed on a lunchbox or Halloween mask, remember, once upon a time, it wasn't cute. It was a signal. A psychological weapon, a floating, flapping declaration that fighting wasn't necessary, because you'd already lost the moment you saw it. You lean against the ship's railing, the smell of salt and old rope thick in your nose. The pirate ship drifts back into the mist, and your captain lets out a breath he'd been holding for 10 full minutes. No cannon fire, no blood. No one's hanging from the yardarm today. Why? Because of that flag, that ridiculous-looking thing with bones on it. And it worked. You're alive. Let's be honest. If someone waved a cartoon skeleton at you in the middle of the street today, you'd probably assume it was a party decoration or someone really into metal bands. But back then, In the 17th and 18th centuries, that skull and crossbones wasn't just an image, it was the final warning. You've heard the name before, the Jolly Roger. But where did that name come from, and why in the world is it called jolly when it basically means we're going to ruin your Tuesday? Historians still argue whether Jolly Roger came from the French phrase Joli Rouge, meaning pretty red, as in the red flag that meant no mercy. Others say it was British sailors mocking the flag's macabre style, calling it jolly in that dry, sarcastic way the British are famous for. They were brash, dramatic, and custom-built to scare the pants off whoever saw them. Let's paint a few pictures. There's Edward England, whose flag showed a full white skull above two crossed bones, not lying flat, but vertical, like a Christian cross. Simple, bold, terrifying. Then there's Black Sam Bellamy, who allegedly flew a white skeleton holding an hourglass in one hand and a dart in the other, poking at a heart. Not subtle, Sam, not subtle. And then there's Calico Jack Rackham, who rocked the classic white skull above two crossed cutlasses. Stylish and direct. Think of it like the pirate version of a sharp business card. Hi, I'm Jack. Let's keep this fast and scary. Each flag was like a signature, part personal brand, part battlefield billboard. A merchant ship might see the black flag and wonder which pirate was approaching. Was it Blackbeard, with his beard full of slow-burning fuses and a face like a thundercloud? Or was it Charles Vane, who liked to torture before he looted? Now, imagine yourself back on your merchant ship. You're peeking through a spyglass. You see the black background first, and then there it is. A skeleton holding a spear, stabbing a bleeding heart. That was the flag of Edward Lowe, one of the most brutal pirates in history. And if you recognize that symbol, your knees might go weak before the pirates even come close. The beauty of these flags was their ability to speak without saying a word. They turned the whole ocean into a theater of fear. Every captain knew that fighting pirates was risky, not just for the loot, but for your life. So when a ship saw a terrifying custom flag, it wasn't just decoration, it was a resume. Let's not forget, pirates were freelancers. They didn't have a navy backing them, no pensions, no dental. Their brand was everything. That's why their flags mattered so much. They needed you to know who they were, and more importantly, to know what might happen if you didn't play along. And there was a weird code to it all, a kind of pirate etiquette. Raise the black flag first. Give up, and you'll live. If they resisted, boom, out comes the red flag. That was your last warning. Think of it as the pirate version of going from kindly asking to flipping the table. Here's a fun, creepy detail. Some flags used hourglasses, skeletons holding them, or just hourglasses alone. Why? Because they were saying, your time is running out. Yeah, pirates knew how to go full horror movies when they wanted to. A skeleton holding a cup? That meant celebration after death. A bleeding heart? You're gonna suffer. A spear through a skull? No ambiguity there. Some captains even added devil horns, wings, or dancing skeletons just to keep things festive. Think of it as violent graphic design. But here's where things get juicy. It worked. According to historical records, many pirate ships never had to fire a shot. The flag alone caused dozens, if not hundreds of ships to surrender immediately. Nobody wanted to risk fighting a crew that chose to advertise themselves with murder emojis. And remember, cannons were no joke. One wrong hit to your hull, and you're swimming home through shark-infested waters. So surrendering to a flag, as humiliating as it was, often felt like the smart move. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some pirates actually painted their flags using blood, like real blood. It's hard to say whether this was practical, theatrical, or just completely unhinged, but hey, it definitely added to the ambiance. Others stitched their flags with stolen cloth or decorated them with bones from animals, or possibly worse. Even the way the flag was raised had strategy. Pirates often waited until they were close, too close, to hoist their true colors. Before that, they might fly a Dutch or English naval flag to sneak up. We'll dive into that trickery in the next section, but for now, just imagine the sheer panic of seeing a friendly flag suddenly replaced by a death banner. Surprise! It's also worth noting that pirate ships weren't all sleek black monsters with glowing red eyes. Most were small, fast, and honestly pretty ugly. So the flag became their best-looking feature. That one shred of cloth was often the most polished thing on board. And here's something wild. Pirates took their flags so seriously, they'd sometimes bury them with honor when a crew disbanded, like laying to rest a comrade. Other times, flags were seized as trophies by the Navy, dragged back to port and displayed like the head of a beast. Now, not every flag was successful. Some were a little too creative. One forgotten pirate, whose name's been lost to time, apparently flew a flag showing a stick figure fainting. Intimidating, debatable, memorable, absolutely. Still, the overall message stayed consistent. We're pirates, and we'd rather you be scared than stupid. Here's the open question. Did the uniqueness of a flag increase its success? Some historians say yes. A more terrifying personal symbol made ships surrender faster. Others argue it was the reputation behind the flag that mattered more. You could sew a clown on your banner, and if you were infamous enough, it would still work. Either way, the flags weren't just props. They were tools, weapons. Psyops before that term even existed. The pirate flag was step one in a well-practiced system designed to make sure you gave up before they had to sweat. And now you, standing on the deck of your ship, will never forget what that skull looked like when it caught the wind. The way its jaw gaped, like it was laughing or screaming. It didn't fire a shot, but it didn't have to. You're pacing the deck again, your boots clunking softly against wet, sun-baked planks. It's been hours since that flag disappeared into the horizon, and yet your hands are still trembling just a little. And you're starting to ask yourself a serious question. If the pirates were that close all along, why didn't you see them sooner? Well, friend, that's part of the trick. Because pirates didn't just wave flags to avoid a fight. First, they lied to your face, or rather to your spyglass, and they were very good at it. Let's talk about the lost art of false colors, a sneaky little game pirates played long before anyone had radar or radio, back when flags weren't just symbols of pride, but legal ID cards fluttering in the wind. See? Ships were required to fly their nation's flag, like wearing a badge that said, "Hi, I'm British, and yes, I would love some tea." But pirates? Pirates were masters of disguise. They'd hoist the flag of whatever country suited their scheme, Spanish, French, Dutch, even American. Once that became a thing, you're standing there, watching a ship slowly approach. You see the British flag, you relax, safe, right? Wrong. That's not a Royal Navy escort. That's a floating lie with cannon teeth. The pirate waits, they get closer, close enough to see the color of your eyes. And just when you start to wave, snap. Down comes the false flag, and up goes the Jolly Roger. That's what they called striking false colors. It meant, surprise, you're about to be very poor and possibly very dead. The whole thing was legal, sort of. Maritime law at the time had an unspoken rule. You could fly any flag you wanted until the moment you fired a shot. The first shot had to come under your true colors. So pirates used this loophole like artists used paint, bold, creative, and just barely not illegal. Historians still argue whether navies sometimes did the same thing. Some say British ships used false colors too, especially when dealing with smugglers. Others insist only pirates took it that far. One thing's clear, if the ocean was a stage, then pirates were its greatest actors. They didn't stop at flags either. No. The whole ship could be part of the disguise. Pirates would intentionally sail in rough-looking vessels, mismatched sails, damaged hulls, sloppy knots, to look like innocent traders or even fishermen. You wouldn't suspect a thing, until they were close enough to throw a grappling hook at your throat. And get this, some pirates even wore costumes, like literal outfits. If they were faking being Spanish sailors, they'd dress like them. Hats, sashes, accents, maybe even practice a few phrases. Buenos dias, amigo. Boom. Now you're surrounded and very confused about your life choices. Here's a quirky little example. The pirate Bartholomew Roberts, one of the most successful raiders in history, once approached a British warship pretending to be a humble Portuguese merchant. His crew spoke Portuguese, waved politely, even had barrels of goods on deck. The British captain fell for it completely until Roberts revealed his real flag and boarded them in under 5 minutes. Talk about a costume change. Even the way pirates moved was strategic. They'd angle their sails to hide their speed, using winds to appear sluggish or casual. Then, at the last second, they'd shift tack, hoist their real flag, and slam forward like a hawk dive bombing a rabbit. If your crew wasn't quick, it was already too late. So you're probably wondering, how did captains not see this coming? Well, picture the open sea. There's no Wi-Fi, no binoculars, just a shaky wooden spyglass, and your gut feeling. And pirates counted on that. They exploited that one moment of hesitation, that small window of belief where your brain said, no way that's a pirate. Pirates don't wear scarves like that. Then, surprise, cannons. And it wasn't just about combat. Pirates used deception to make money faster. Because fighting? That's messy. Takes time. Uses gunpowder, risks injury. But tricking someone into giving up without a fight? That's premium piracy. Maximum loot, minimum bruises. Let's take a second to appreciate the logistics. Pirate crews were usually smaller than Navy or merchant crews, sometimes way smaller. Their best weapon wasn't brute strength, it was fear. And fear works better when it creeps in before the first shot is fired. So they used theater. They staged the approach. They lied convincingly. They saved the flag for just the right moment when the fear hit hardest. Think of it this way. The black flag wasn't the beginning of the performance. It was the final act, the big reveal. The mask dropped, the mic drops. The signal that said, game's over, you lost. Let's not forget, some pirates never revealed their real flag. They simply boarded and looted under false colors, then disappeared. For them, the disguise wasn't a prelude. It was the whole show. And the ocean was so big and the court so corrupt that many of them got away with it. Entire careers were built on pretending to be someone else. One pirate, Jean Fleury, even posed as a privateer for so long that half the Caribbean wasn't sure whose side he was on. He looted Spanish treasure fleets while waving a French naval flag, then turned around and robbed French traders. That's like wearing a police uniform to rob a bank and then arresting someone else on the way out. Here's a fringe tidbit for you. Some pirates reportedly painted over their ships' names and renamed them entirely to fit their cover stories. That cute little brig called the Rose of Providence? Surprise! It's actually Death's Rattle, and you're about to meet the business end of a cutlass. Even their accents were tools of deception. Multinational crews picked up bits of languages from everywhere. West Africa, Ireland, Portugal, the Caribbean, indigenous peoples. You'd hear voices on deck and think you were approaching a mixed trading vessel. But you were actually hearing pirate Esperanto. But as clever as they were, pirate lies had limits. The moment a real Navy ship realized what was happening, oh boy, that's when things got spicy. Because if a pirate was caught using false flags, they weren't just hanged. Sometimes their bodies were tarred and hung in cages by the shoreline as warnings. A little maritime Yelp review. 2 stars. Bad attitude and lots of screaming. So, pirates had to walk a fine line. Trick enough ships to build your reputation, but not so many that every navy in Europe started hunting you personally. It was like being a famous cat burglar. Great until someone installs a security system. Here's the irony. The best liars were often the safest. Why? Because they didn't have to kill. They didn't have to chase. They just fooled you. You gave them the cargo, they took it, and they were gone before you realized your insurance didn't cover bamboozled by fancy hats. Let's rewind to you, standing on deck. You're watching a ship approach, maybe even waving. You think you're safe. Then the flag changes, and suddenly your entire crew is sprinting to battle positions. Your hands are shaking as you load the cannon. You're not ready. You were never meant to be ready. That's the genius of pirate deception. They didn't win because they were stronger. They won because they were smarter. You barely sleep that night. The creak of the hull, the slap of waves, the low groan of the wind in the rigging, they all feel like they're whispering the same thing. They could still be out there. You lie there, wide-eyed in your hammock, trying to convince yourself the pirates are gone. But deep down, you're not sure, because now you know they're not just brutes with cutlasses. They're magicians, con artists, chess players with cannons. And worse, they might not need to fight you at all, because here's the twist you weren't expecting. Some pirates could win without ever boarding your ship. No gunfire, no swordplay, just a little wind, a black flag, and your captain's heart dropping straight into his boots. Let's talk about surrender psychology. Pirates weren't just out to take your cargo, they were trying to take your nerve. And the way they used flags, that was their biggest psychological weapon. See, that black flag wasn't just a scary picture. It was a message, a promise, a threat. And everyone knew what it meant. If you surrendered immediately, you'd probably live. If you didn't, well, that's when things got messy. Red flags are messy. Remember those flags we talked about earlier? The black ones with skulls, bones, hourglasses, bleeding hearts. They weren't just flair, they were codes. They told you what kind of pirate you were dealing with. And more importantly, they told you what might happen if you made the wrong choice. Let's paint the picture. You're a merchant captain. You've got 20 men, 5 rusty cannons, and a hold full of sugar and rum, basically a floating gift basket. Then a ship appears on the horizon, fast, sleek, not flying any flag at all. Already, your stomach drops. Then, boom, up goes a black flag with a white skull and hourglass. You recognize it. Maybe it's Blackbeard. Maybe it's some other madman. You glance at your crew. They're pale. One of them is already praying. No one wants to die for a paycheck. So you face the worst question of all. Do you fight or do you fold? And that's exactly where the pirates wanted you, right on the edge. See, pirate flags worked like emotional blackmail. They made you fill in the blanks. They made you remember the horror stories, the massacres, the rumors of entire crews tossed overboard or worse. It didn't matter if half those stories weren't true. The fear was. Historians still argue whether most pirates were truly bloodthirsty or just savvy performers. Some say the reputation was earned. Others say it was carefully crafted, a myth designed to do the dirty work before the pirates ever got close. And the pirates? Oh, they knew exactly what they were doing. Let's break down how surrender worked. If a pirate wanted to scare you into giving up, the process usually went like this. First, they flew no flag at all, just a silent approach, as if they might be a traitor or a lost Navy scout. Then, when they were close enough to make you sweat, they raised the black flag. That was your first and only warning. If you surrendered right then, you might be spared. The pirates would take your cargo, maybe some valuables, and leave you with enough food and water to limp home. Sometimes they even gave receipts. Yep, pirates with paperwork. We'll talk more about that oddball detail later. But if you tried to run, or worse, if you fired a shot, that's when the red flag went up. A red flag meant no quarter, no mercy, no survivors. This wasn't a business transaction anymore, it was revenge. And that little square of crimson cloth could change your entire fate. Some pirates even had both flags ready, black in one hand, red in the other. They'd wave the black one like a gentleman knocking at your door. Then, if you ignored it, they'd hoist the red with a theatrical flourish. It was like saying, "You had your chance. Now we dance." Let's pause for a quirky tidbit. There are tales, some true, some wildly embellished, of pirates actually naming their flags. One of Blackbeard's ships reportedly carried a flag called Death and the Devil, with a skeleton toasting the Grim Reaper. Another crew had a banner nicknamed Old Roger, which is where the term Jolly Roger supposedly comes from. Funny how pirates gave their flags such cheerful nicknames when they basically meant good luck surviving the next 10 minutes. And yes, some pirates even customized their flags, added personal touches. A bleeding heart meant cruelty. An hourglass meant you were running out of time. A sword meant aggression. Some had entire scenes stitched onto cloth, devils stabbing men, skeletons dancing with sabers, severed heads grinning like jack-o'-lanterns. It was marketing. Terrifying, brilliant marketing. Now, here's the really clever part. Because surrender was so common, pirates could actually loot more efficiently without destroying the ships. Why sink a perfectly good vessel when you could just rob it and move on? One famous pirate, Samuel Bellamy, sometimes called Black Sam, was known for preferring surrender over violence. His crew took over 50 ships, many of them without firing a single cannonball. He'd fly a terrifying flag, corner the merchant captain, and offer them a deal. Surrender now and live, or resist and get eaten by sharks. Most people chose life. Shocking, I know. But not every pirate was so polite. Some used the surrender system as a trap. They'd let a captain surrender, board the ship, and then rob, kill, or enslave the crew anyway. It was a dirty trick, but it worked. And every time a story like that got told, it made the next surrender even faster. Fear was the fuel, and it burned hotter with every tale. That's why many merchant captains simply gave up the moment they saw a black flag. They weren't just worried about dying, they were worried about what kind of pirate they'd encountered. Because pirates didn't all follow the same rules. Some, like Henry Morgan, operated more like private military contractors. Others, like Ned Lowe, were straight-up murderers with sails. You never knew what kind you were dealing with until it was too late. Even pirates who wanted peaceful surrenders sometimes had to get dramatic. There's one tale, again hotly debated by historians, about a pirate who would fire a blank shot as a warning. If the ship didn't surrender after that, he'd switch to live rounds and aim for the rudder or sails. He didn't want to kill. He wanted to convince me. And here's the kicker. Some pirates even gave out business cards. Not literal paper ones, but reputations that traveled ahead of them. Crews would say, "Don't mess with that guy. He took 3 Spanish galleons last month." Or, "That's the pirate who beheaded a captain and gave the hat to his parrot." Okay, that last one's probably not true. But honestly, you'd still surrender just in case. Let's zoom back in. You're on that merchant ship again. You see the black flag? You hesitate. The crew looks at you, terrified. You raise the white flag. Surrender. The pirate ship glides up beside you, eerie and elegant. They board. Their captain nods politely. His men swarm your hold like bees with knives. 15 minutes later, they're gone. You're poorer, shaken but alive. And in the strange logic of the sea, that's a win. That's how flags kept pirates rich and mostly uninjured. They skipped the mess. They skipped the casualties. They let your mind do the work for them. And you better believe they kept score. Pirates talked. Ports buzzed with gossip. Captains shared stories. Every successful no-shot surrender made the next one easier. It was a ripple effect of dread, and the flag was the stone they dropped into the pond. You tuck yourself back into your hammock now, finally starting to drift. But there's still a thought in the back of your mind, curling like smoke. What would you have done if you'd seen that flag? Would you fight, or would you fold? The salt air is quieter tonight. There's a hush in the wind, a rhythm to the waves that almost lulls you back into sleep. But not quite, because your mind is busy, still spinning around one question. Why did everyone know what pirate flags meant? Seriously, in a time when most people couldn't even read, how did sailors, some barely educated, many superstitious, some drunk most days, instantly recognize a skull and bones on black cloth as a life or death ultimatum? Well, welcome to Pirate Marketing School. Let's talk about branding, 18th century style. Because before they were seaborne criminals, pirates were masters of visual propaganda, and the Jolly Roger, that was their ultimate logo. You've already met a few versions: hourglasses, skeletons, swords, bleeding hearts. But these designs didn't come from some uniform pirate headquarters. There was no pirate HR department issuing standard flags. No monthly newsletter saying, "This season's top intimidation motif is skeletons holding hourglasses while kicking cherubs." Every flag came from a very personal, often improvisational place, and each one was handcrafted for maximum dread. But here's the kicker. Despite all the variation, sailors learned what those symbols meant. Because pirate flags weren't just seen once. They were talked about in every tavern, whispered about on every dock, and, most chillingly, described by survivors. Imagine this scene. You've just limped your ship into port after barely escaping a pirate raid. Your sails are shredded, your cargo's gone, and your quartermaster has a bandaged ear where someone mistook it for a coin pouch. The first thing everyone wants to know: what did their flag look like? You describe it: black, with a man holding a cutlass in one hand and a beating heart in the other. The room goes silent. Someone mutters, "That's Rackham's crew." And boom, Everyone in that bar now knows to fear that flag. That's how pirate imagery spread. Not through books or newspapers, but through oral folklore, stories, exaggerations, gossip. And those stories traveled fast, faster than the ships themselves sometimes. Long before a pirate appeared off a coast, his flag's reputation might already be waiting for him. Now here's a fun tidbit. Some flags were purposefully misleading. A pirate might fly the Union Jack until the last possible second, lulling you into false security. Then, bam, he'd swap in the black flag like a magician pulling off a mask. This trick was so common, it earned its own name, false flagging. Even the navies did it. But with pirates, it carried a special stink, because it wasn't just deception. It was theatrical betrayal. And once that black cloth unfurled, the clock started ticking on your decision. Speaking of which, let's dive deeper into the symbols themselves. Take the hourglass, classic pirate flag icon. You might think it's about time running out, and you'd be right. But it was also a twist on the old medieval memento mori images. Latin for remember you will die. Grim, right? Pirates loved that stuff. They were all about reminders of death. Yours, theirs, everybody's. The skeleton? That one's pretty obvious. But did you know some pirate flags had dancing skeletons with horns, drinking from goblets? That wasn't just spookiness. It was a celebration. These weren't just death threats. They were party invitations to the grave. Pirates had a dark sense of humor, and the bleeding heart, that was worse than any skull. A heart dripping blood meant cruelty. It meant pain before death. Some flags even showed the skeleton stabbing the heart with a spear. That one was favored by Edward Lowe, who, according to legend, once cut off a man's lips and made him eat them. Yeah, sweet dreams. Here's a flag-related debate for you. Was the skull and crossbones ever really that common? You've seen it on every Halloween costume, every cartoon, every bottle of cartoon poison. But some historians argue it wasn't even the most popular pirate symbol during the golden age of piracy. In fact, records show more customized flags than standardized ones. There's debate over whether the classic Jolly Roger, white skull over crossed tibias, was more of a Hollywood invention than a historical staple. But then again, what is history, if not stories we keep repeating until they stick? There's another weird angle here. Flags were expensive. No, really. You couldn't just waltz into Pirate Target and pick one off the shelf. You needed canvas, dye, someone who could paint or stitch. Sometimes pirates stole flags and repurposed them. Other times, they just made their own out of old sails and imagination, which means some of these terrifying banners were literally pirate arts and crafts projects. Picture that for a moment. You're this hardened pirate who's raided 30 ships and taken on 2 hurricanes. And there you are below deck, squinting at your needlework, trying to get a skeleton's grin to look just right. Oi, Jack, does this bleeding heart look menacing enough? I need more blood. Historical intimidation, brought to you by artsy felons with a flair for design. And once the flag was made, oh boy, presentation mattered. Pirates didn't just raise flags, they unleashed them at the perfect moment, when the wind caught just right and your ship was trapped with no easy escape. It was like revealing a weapon, but one made of nightmares instead of steel. Here's a theory. Pirates understood theater. They weren't just criminals. They were performers. The sea was their stage. The flag was their dramatic curtain raiser. And your reaction? That was the show. Let's zoom in on one more thing: how flags helped build pirate reputation. See, some captains treated their flag like a calling card. Take Black Bart Roberts. This guy was the rock star of pirate branding. He didn't just have one flag, he had multiple. One showed him standing on two skulls labeled ABH and AMH, a Barbadian's head and a Martiniquean's head. It was his way of saying, "I don't like your colonies, and I'll prove it." Another of his flags showed him raising a goblet with death himself. Cheers, mate. Now imagine being a merchant sailor from Barbados, spotting that flag on the horizon. You're not just scared, you're specifically targeted. That flag is a personalized threat. And it worked. Roberts took over 400 ships in just 3 years, partly because he was good, but also because his flag made people panic before he even arrived. That's the heart of pirate flag strategy. They weren't trying to fight you. They were trying to win before fighting became necessary. And if their reputation got there ahead of them, thanks to that flag, they'd already won. Now for a quieter moment. Imagine you're a sailor again. Not a captain this time, just some guy. You've never been in a fight. You joined the ship because your uncle said you'd see the world. You miss your bed. You miss soup. You definitely did not sign up to get gutted by guys with skeleton flags. Then one morning, someone shouts, "Sails on the horizon." You climb the rigging with the others, squinting into the sun. And there it is, a ship, sleek, fast, black flag flapping. You don't need anyone to explain what it means. You already know, because last week in port, someone told a story about a flag just like that. You laughed it off at the time, said it was probably made up. Now you're not so sure. Now your mouth's dry, your fingers are shaking. Your captain is pacing, and all you want is to go home. That's what the pirates were counting on, because if enough sailors felt what you feel right now, their job got a whole lot easier. They didn't need cannons. They didn't need a boarding party. They just needed a flag. So there you are, sails cracking in the wind, the shadow of a black flag dancing in the distance like a death omen. But here's the weird twist. You're ready for a chase, maybe a desperate fight. And then nothing happens. The pirate ship slows. It veers off. Maybe it turns around entirely. What just happened? Well, you, my friend, have just witnessed the real power of the pirate flag. Not as a call to battle, but as a bluff, a deterrent. Because here's the heart of the whole idea. Pirates didn't actually want to fight. Fighting was risky. Fighting meant broken bones, spilled guts, damaged ships, and worst of all, time lost. And time was gold at sea, so they perfected the art of intimidation without violence. And how did they do that? With expectation management. The flag was only part of it. The rest was about the atmosphere. Pirates crafted an entire vibe of terror. Let's build that vibe together. You're a merchant sailor. You see the black flag, but that's not all. You also see the crew dancing shirtless on deck, waving axes. The captain staring through a telescope, calmly chewing on what might be a human finger. Cannons rolled into place, not firing, just waiting. And worst of all, someone hoisting another flag, a red one. The black flag meant, "We might spare you if you give up." The red flag meant, "We won't." This wasn't pirate poetry. This was blood red, literal messaging. No quarter, no mercy. If you resisted, they would kill everyone. So what do? Your captain makes eye contact with the other captain across the water, just long enough to understand. You don't even fight. You surrender. Hands in the air, maybe a white cloth tied to the mast, maybe a shout across the water. Don't shoot. And just like that, it's over, No cannonballs, no grappling hooks, no swords in your belly. The pirates board, take your cargo, maybe slap you on the back for being smart, and leave. You live because of a flag. This was the ideal outcome for everyone involved. You didn't die, they didn't waste gunpowder, and your crew didn't spend 2 weeks patching holes in the hull. Clean, efficient, terrifying. Now, here's the fun part. This strategy worked so well that some pirates got reputations so fearsome, ships would give up just by hearing their name. Take Blackbeard, for instance. You remember him? The guy who braided slow-burning fuses into his beard to look like a sea demon from a sailor's worst fever dream? Yeah, him. Edward Teach. He rarely had to fight. His sheer presence, his size, his fire-crackling facial hair, and his black flag, a skeleton stabbing a heart while holding an hourglass, by the way, did most of the work. Sailors would practically throw treasure at him just to avoid the possibility of those smoking eyebrows coming any closer. And if the psychological tactics ever failed, oh well, then they brought out the real fireworks. Here's another fun angle. Pirates were early adopters of information warfare. Oh yes, long before governments started deploying psyops and disinformation campaigns, pirates were already whispering scary bedtime stories about themselves. They wanted you to hear how cruel they were, not just because they were mean, but because fear saved them effort. They spread rumors, exaggerated past raids, even staged grisly scenes to be discovered. You might find a ship drifting, everyone dead, throat slit with the word pirate carved into the mast. It might be real. Or it might be pirate PR, like leaving a horror movie poster stapled to a tree. Historians still argue whether some of the most gruesome pirate stories are true or just very effective fear branding. Take Charles Vane, known for sadistic cruelty. He once reportedly tortured a ship's captain for hours just to make a point. Did it really happen? Maybe, maybe not. But the rumor sure kept a lot of ships from testing his patience. But here's a beautiful irony. The more a pirate avoided violence, the more famous he became for potential violence. That's how Bartholomew Roberts operated. Remember him? Tall, Welsh, wore a crimson waistcoat like a theater actor. He once captured over 400 ships without spilling much blood at all. How? He flew a frightening flag, treated captured crews with just enough meanness to keep the stories juicy, and was polite unless provoked. He'd throw parties, toast the king, ironically, sometimes even return a bit of cargo as a show of pirate courtesy, and then sail away, leaving behind 1,000 terrified eyewitnesses ready to spread the tale. It's like if Batman robbed you, complimented your shoes, and left a business card. And here's the weirdest twist of all. Pirates preferred cowards. Yes, they loved ships that surrendered easily, because bravado got you killed. But surrender, that got you spared, which means that flag, torn, stained, blowing in the salty wind, was really a kind of twisted handshake, a warning, an offer. We won't kill you if you don't make us. Now, let's not romanticize this too much. Pirates could be savages when things went sideways. If a crew resisted and pirates had to fight, the punishment was often brutal. They made examples. One famous tactic: marooning. If pirates were feeling poetic, they'd drop the most defiant member of a captured crew on a small island. No food, no water, just a pistol with one shot. Survive if you can. The point wasn't just punishment, it was theatrical dread. The pirates wanted the next ship to hear about it and surrender faster. Which brings us to another debate. Was piracy sustainable? Historians argue over whether these fear tactics could last in the long term. After all, once everyone knew the pirate flag meant surrender or die, wouldn't navies eventually just attack on sight? Yes and no. Some navies did ramp up responses. The British Royal Navy, for instance, eventually dispatched pirate hunters who took down many notorious captains. But by then, piracy had been running wild for decades. The pirate flag had already done its job, over and over. And it wasn't just Western Europe playing this game. Pirates in the Caribbean, the Indian Ocean, the South China Sea, all used visual signals to scare or sway. Some used flags, others used decapitated heads on pikes. Same message. Don't mess with us unless you want a very short, very bad day. Okay, deep breath. Let's step back. You're still out at sea, wind in your face. The pirate ship has moved on. Your cargo's safe. Your crew's shaken but alive. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you know the truth. They didn't want you. Not really. They just wanted your story. They wanted you to return to port and tell people. Describe the flag. Describe the cold eyes of the captain. Describe the deck stained red even though nobody had fired a shot. They wanted you to be their messenger. Because the next time their flag rose above the horizon, it would already have a reputation riding on the wind ahead of it. You're at sea again, still on edge, scanning the horizon for that cursed ripple of black in the sky. And just when you start to relax, thinking maybe this voyage will go smoother, boom, there it is again. But wait, this flag looks different. Not the usual skull and crossbones, not even the blood-red one from last time. This one's got a skeleton dancing with a spear. Or maybe it's raising a toast. And is that a heart? Now you're confused. But don't feel bad. So was half the maritime world. You've just stumbled into the secret visual language of pirate flags. See, pirates weren't just flying any old scary symbol to match the mood. They were customizing, branding, storytelling before Instagram ever existed. Each captain developed a personal design, crafted like a terrifying signature, and each version had a message encoded in bone-white threads. Take the most famous one first, the Jolly Roger. That white skull and crossbones on a black background. It's iconic now, right? It's on mugs, tattoos, and inflatable pool floats. But back in the 1700s, it wasn't a universal thing. It was just one version of many. Historians still argue whether Jolly Roger was a slang term for all pirate flags, or specifically the skull crossbones one. Some say the name came from Joli Rouge, French for pretty red, possibly referring to the bloody red flags pirates sometimes flew to signal no mercy. Others think Old Roger was a nickname for the devil, which fits the theme nicely, don't you think? But here's the juicy part. Pirate captains didn't just pick flags from a catalog. These were custom fear signals, carefully designed to strike terror and recognition. Let's look at a few of the greatest hits and what they were meant to say. Blackbeard's flag, for example, a skeleton holding an hourglass in one hand and a spear in the other, stabbing a bleeding heart. The hourglass says, "Time's running out." The heart says, "We will stab you." And the smiling skeleton? That's just him being cheeky. Or how about Edward Lowe, an especially nasty piece of work? His flag showed a red skeleton with one hand raised in salute and the other holding a dart about to hurl it. Fun fact, the color red here wasn't just pigment, it was a declaration. This guy didn't do warning shots. Historians describe him as so violent, even other pirates thought he was too much. Calico Jack Rackham, the guy who made the skull and crossed swords design famous, was more stylish, less brute force, more theatrical flair. His flag was like a pirate emoji, skull up top, crossed cutlasses below. Sleek, direct, a little cheeky, and easily remembered, which, let's be honest, is half the battle when you're trying to scare folks without actually killing them. Then there was Bartholomew Roberts, aka Black Bart, who wasn't just successful, he was showy. One of his flags showed him standing calmly, sword in hand, clinking glasses with a skeleton. Another had him standing on two skulls labeled ABH and AMH. That's a Barbadian's head and a Martiniquean's head, in case anyone from those islands was unclear about how he felt. Now here's a quirky little tidbit. Not all pirate flags were black. Some pirates flipped the code completely and flew white flags first. Not in surrender, but to pretend to be friendly. They'd sail up looking like merchants or diplomats, flying peaceful colors. And just when you relaxed, wham! They'd raise the real flag at the last second. Surprise! Others flew national flags, British, French, Dutch, until they got close enough to strike. It's one of the oldest tricks in the sea playbook. Fake your identity, then reveal the horror right when the adrenaline's highest. Modern navies eventually outlawed this tactic, calling it false flagging. But pirates? Pirates were the kings of false flagging. This constant visual deception gave rise to what some historians call the flag drama ritual. Here's how it worked. Pirate ship spotted. Pirate flies fake flag, maybe a peaceful one. As it closes in, it raises the black flag. Merchant crew panics, tries to run. Pirates raise the red flag. Merchant captain immediately surrenders. Each flag was a psychological escalation. It was like texting someone in all caps, then adding emojis, then finally showing up at their house with a baseball bat. You knew exactly what was coming, and you wanted to avoid step 3. But here's something that makes all this more interesting. Not all pirates could afford custom flags. That's right. Fancy embroidery, bold colors, that cost money, or stolen cloth, or at least someone who could draw a decent skeleton. Smaller pirate crews often had simpler flags, sometimes just black bed sheets painted with chalk, or tattered sails repurposed and dyed with ink, soot, or even gunpowder paste. So when you saw a super clean, artistic pirate flag, that meant the crew was successful, not just violent, but experienced, wealthy, organized, which, ironically, made them even more dangerous. Now, let's rewind the sea clock a little further. Before the famous golden age of piracy, naval ships had used colors to signal things too. Red meant no quarter. White meant let's talk. Blue sometimes meant I'm in a bad mood. Flags were the emoji language of the ocean long before radios or radar. Pirates took this tradition and weaponized it. Here's a fringe theory. Some historians believe pirates even traded flag ideas like sticker collections. Oh, you're using a bleeding heart? Cool, I'll add a skeleton while drinking wine. The designs evolved, they copied each other. Some even stole flags from captured pirates like trophies. And this raises a question. If every pirate had a different flag, how did sailors recognize them so quickly? Answer, word of mouth. Ports were the Twitter of the 1700s. Sailors talked. They described flags in vivid, scary detail. Blackbeard's got a horned skeleton stabbing a heart. Roberts has skulls labeled with islands. Don't sail near him. These stories traveled faster than ships. And remember, pirates didn't want to be mysterious. They wanted fame. They wanted merchant crews to recognize their brand the moment it rose. Fear was their customer loyalty program. But even with all this scary pageantry, there were mistakes. Oh yes, plenty of awkward, unintended moments. Imagine this. A merchant ship sees a black flag on the horizon and panics. Turns out, it's just a regular trading ship with a dirty sail. Or worse, another pirate ship pretending to be a scarier pirate to get the same reaction. That's right. Pirates impersonating other pirates. The sea was full of drama queens. There's even a recorded incident where a pirate flew a copy of Blackbeard's flag after Blackbeard was dead. A kind of tribute, or maybe a bluff. Either way, it worked. The ship they approached surrendered immediately. Of course, this identity theft wasn't always appreciated. Real pirate captains guarded their image the way celebrities guard their Instagram passwords. Because your flag was your brand, and if it lost its impact, so did your power. Which brings us to the inevitable downside. What happens when the flag stopped working? Over time, navies adapted. They learned the designs, built stronger, faster ships. And most importantly, they stopped being scared. Pirates started running into merchant vessels that were armed, not soft. The flags went up, and instead of surrendering, the pirates got cannon fire. Some pirates responded by upping the ante. Scarier flags, meaner reputations, more violence. But it became a game of diminishing returns. The bluff worked less, the danger increased. The golden age of pirate flag warfare was slowly unraveling. Still, for a few glorious decades, those cloth rectangles ruled the seas. They weren't just decorations, they were tactical tools. They saved lives, won loot, and wrote legends. And as you lower your telescope, staring at that waving black shape in the distance, you realize something. They don't even need to attack. They just need you to believe they will. The sea is quiet now, too quiet. After all that swirling drama of pirate flags, sneaky deceptions, and escalating visual threats, you might think the show's over. But oh no, now we slide deeper into the next layer of mind games. What happens after the flag is raised, but before a single cannon is fired? This, dear listener, is the delicate art of negotiation by intimidation, pirate style. Imagine you're on a merchant ship, maybe hauling molasses or indigo or just boring old barrels of salted pork. It's been a long voyage, the crew's tired, and your last letter from home is already smudged with tears and seawater. Then, boom, a dark shape on the horizon. The flag goes up, and your captain starts to sweat. But here's the twist. Most pirate captains didn't actually want to board your ship. Why would they? It was messy, risky. Crew members could get injured, or worse, drop something valuable overboard. A clean surrender was way better. It meant they got all the cargo, nobody died, and they could move on to the next poor soul without wasting time scrubbing blood off the deck. So what did pirates do? They performed. Piracy, in its prime, wasn't just crime, it was theater. They relied on dramatic intimidation to avoid combat altogether. That means you'd see some pretty wild things just before they even said hello. Blackbeard, of course, wins the Tony Award. The man was a full-blown Broadway villain. He tied slow-burning matches under his hat, so smoke curled around his face like a demon straight from the underworld. His eyes would glow red from the sulfur. He'd load multiple pistols into a sash across his chest, some of which he didn't even fire, just to look more terrifying. His beard? Braided into dreadlocks and twisted with ribbons. Very fashion-forward, very murdery. Some pirate ships even had fake cannons. They'd carve logs into the shape of gun barrels and paint them black. From a distance, you couldn't tell the difference. Suddenly, a rickety two-cannon sloop looked like a floating death fortress. Clever, right? And there's more. Pirates would shout gruesome threats, some real, some exaggerated, over the water before even stepping aboard. Things like, "Surrender now or we'll gut your captain and string his guts like rope." That's the G-rated version, by the way. The real ones were too colorful for bedtime. Sometimes they fired blanks, literally, just to cause panic without using real shots. Imagine the confusion, smoke, sound, screaming, but no cannonballs. And before you can figure it out, there's a rowboat heading your way. This wasn't just scare tactics, it was psychological warfare. If you could make the crew panic, start jumping overboard, dropping weapons, maybe even locking their own captain in his cabin, you'd already won. And all without losing a drop of blood. One of the quirkiest strategies? Pirates would sometimes pretend to be a naval ship coming to rescue a merchant vessel from pirates, before revealing themselves as the real threat. "Ahoy, we're here to save you!" And then, boom, up goes the flag, the fake cannons swivel forward, and the terrified crew realizes they've been played harder than a tavern fiddle. Historians still argue whether some of these strategies were widespread or the product of a few notorious captains whose legends got generously inflated. But even the fringe stories say something important. Pirates were willing to invest effort into fear. And this leads us to the golden rule of intimidation at sea. If they're afraid of you, they give up everything. If they're not afraid, you get nothing, or a cannonball, which is why pirate captains spent time crafting a legend. The flag was step one, the performance was step two, and now we arrive at the key ingredient, reputation. Let's pause here and think about pirate reputation like a modern Yelp rating. Each encounter was a review. 5 stars, terrifying, took all our stuff but let us live. Or 1 star, they killed half the crew, not worth it. If a pirate was known to kill everyone, no one would surrender. Why would they? Death either way. So that pirate would face more resistance, more bloodshed, more headaches. But a pirate known to be brutal only if you fought, that was the sweet spot. It created what scholars call a rational surrender economy. It was profitable not to kill, so long as the victims believed you would. Let's zoom in on a specific example. Stade Bonnet, the so-called gentleman pirate. He's fascinating because, unlike most pirates, he wasn't a salty sailor. He was a rich landowner from Barbados who literally bought a ship, hired a crew, and decided to become a pirate out of boredom. Midlife crisis, pirate edition. Bonnet dressed fancy, talked posh, and mostly relied on Blackbeard to teach him the ropes, literally. But what he lacked in seamanship, he made up for in bravado. His crew? Not very loyal. His strategies? Often clumsy. But because he looked the part and acted like a villain, he still got results early on. His success wasn't from firepower, it was from fear projection. Of course, once word got out that he didn't really know what he was doing, things fell apart. He was eventually captured, tried, and hanged in Charleston. Reputation, downvoted to 0 stars. Contrast that with Bartholomew Roberts, who we mentioned earlier, the gold standard for pirate professionalism. He was elegant, efficient, and kept a tight code of conduct. No drinking on duty, no gambling. Everyone had chores. Seriously. His intimidation wasn't chaotic, it was disciplined. And people surrendered because they'd heard, if you give up, he won't kill you. If you fight, well... Now let's peek behind the curtain at the crew psychology during these moments. Remember, a pirate ship wasn't a democracy, but it was closer than a Navy ship. The crew often voted on key decisions, especially whether to attack, chase, or accept surrender. So imagine the drama when a surrendering merchant crew offers their cargo without a fight. Some pirates might grumble, "Oh, we could have taken more." Others might cheer, "Less risk, more loot." That internal tension mattered. If a captain acted too softly, the crew might mutiny. If he was too cruel, the crew might abandon ship next time they reached port. Pirates, for all their theatrics, were pragmatic. They wanted gold, sugar, rum, not endless violence, and they understood that the best haul was the one you didn't bleed for. Here's an eerie little nugget. Some captains even kept notebooks with details on the ships they'd taken. Names, routes, crew behavior, like sea-bound criminal spreadsheets. Ah yes, the Merry Wren. Good manners, fast surrender. Recommend revisiting. It was like customer service, but in reverse. And sometimes, if you were particularly clever, you could even negotiate back with pirates. Offer them extra supplies, point them toward another ship full of richer goods, or even, this happened, join them. Pirate crews were always looking for strong arms and useful skills, so a sharp navigator or a handy carpenter might escape death by switching sides. Of course, if you tried to bluff, you'd better be good at it. One merchant captain once told a pirate he had a plague aboard just to scare them off. It worked, until they realized he was lying and came back with, let's say, excessive enthusiasm. Still, the success rate of intimidation shows us something amazing. For all their infamy, pirates were more successful as performers than as fighters. The real win wasn't the cannonball, it was the surrender flag rising from the enemy ship. So now, as you drift across this quiet stretch of ocean, you understand something crucial. It's not about who fires first. It's about who never has to. That black flag you spotted hours ago, it's still fluttering. The ship is drawing closer. You squint through the spyglass. A skeleton with a spear, a bleeding heart, an hourglass nearly empty. You hold your breath. And slowly your captain reaches for the white flag. Because he knows, and now so do you. Sometimes the scariest pirates never even pull the trigger. The white flag flutters up the mast like a sigh. You watch it tremble there, ghostly against the sky. No battle today, just surrender. But don't relax too quickly, because now comes the delicate part, the terms. When a pirate ship accepts your surrender, the real game begins. There are no standard procedures here, no Geneva Conventions, no universally agreed upon customs. It all comes down to one thing, the pirate code and how the captain feels that day. And here's the twist that historians still squabble over. There was no single pirate code, not really. It wasn't like a sea version of the Constitution, laminated and passed around like a ship menu. No, the code was more like a chalkboard at a rough tavern, rewritten whenever someone spilled grog on it. Different crews had different rules, often voted on democratically before a voyage began. Still, some common ideas held up across the Caribbean. Pirates might have been criminals, but they weren't chaotic, at least not always. So let's say you're the captain of the surrendered merchant ship. You're standing on deck, heart pounding, the pirate rowboat getting closer. You can see a huge man in the bow, shirt open, rings glinting, a wicked grin plastered on his face like a tattoo. He's got pistols strapped across his chest and a cutlass so shiny it probably gets its own rations. Now you've got to choose your words carefully, because what happens next depends entirely on how useful you are. If your ship's loaded with sugar, spices, fine cloth, or, oh no, rum, you're in trouble. That's prime loot. The pirates might seize it all, dump you on a lifeboat, and sail away laughing. But if you've got nothing but dried cod, sick crew, and a Bible, you might walk away intact. One pirate costume that comes into play here is called parole. If the pirates believed you were honest and no threat, they might let you and your crew go, on your word of honor, not to fight pirates again. This was especially common for doctors, musicians, and navigators. Why kill the guy who knows how to fix a dislocated shoulder or play a sad jig on a fiddle? But if they think you're lying, or if someone recognizes your ship from a past betrayal, well, let's just say they weren't big on second chances. Here's where things get even more twisted. Sometimes the pirates would offer terms of surrender before boarding, like a menu of fates. Hand over your gold and go free. Refuse, and we'll maroon you on the next sandbar. Fight, and we'll make an example of you. And occasionally they'd ask questions before deciding what to do with you. It was like a deadly interview. Where are you coming from? What's your cargo? Any soldiers on board? Do you believe in second chances? A wrong answer could mean disaster. A clever answer might save your ship. Historians still debate whether this was true negotiation or just theater to make their victims squirm. After all, pirates had a flair for the dramatic. But accounts from captured sailors suggest that negotiations did happen, and that pirates valued speed. A quick deal meant they could move on to the next target before naval patrols caught wind of their location. And here's a quirky footnote. Some pirates even gave receipts. Yes, actual slips of parchment signed by the pirate captain that said, "This ship has been robbed by Captain so-and-so. Do not rob it again." That way, other pirates would see the note and pass them by. A kind of professional courtesy. Call it thieves' insurance. Now back to you, still standing on the deck, waiting as the pirates come aboard. One of them growls, "Where's the quartermaster?" Ah, yes, the pirate quartermaster. Not to be confused with the naval version. On pirate ships, the quartermaster was the second most powerful man, often in charge of discipline, plunder division, and enforcing the code. He might handle the actual negotiations while the captain paced the deck, looking terrifying. He steps forward now, tall, lean, maybe missing a few fingers, and looks you over. "Show us the hold," he says. Not a request. You nod, heart hammering, and lead him below. A wrong answer could mean disaster. A clever answer might save your ship. Historians still debate whether this was true negotiation or just theater to make their victims squirm. After all, pirates had a flair for the dramatic. But accounts from captured sailors suggest that negotiations did happen, and that pirates valued speed. A quick deal meant they could move on to the next target before naval patrols caught wind of their location. And here's a quirky footnote. Some pirates even gave receipts. Yes, actual slips of parchment signed by the pirate captain that said, "This ship has been robbed by Captain so-and-so. Do not rob it again." That way, other pirates would see the note and pass them by. A kind of professional courtesy. Call it thieves' insurance. Now back to you, still standing on the deck, waiting as the pirates come aboard. One of them growls, "Where's the quartermaster?" Ah, yes, the pirate quartermaster. Not to be confused with the naval version. On pirate ships, the quartermaster was the second most powerful man, often in charge of discipline, plunder division, and enforcing the code. He might handle the actual negotiations while the captain paced the deck, looking terrifying. He steps forward now, tall, lean, maybe missing a few fingers, and looks you over. "Show us the hold," he says. Not a request. You nod, heart hammering, and lead him below. You stand on the deck of the pirate ship now, still adjusting to your new reality. The surrender flag was just the beginning. Now you are part of the strange, chaotic world where fear, freedom, and loyalty all collide on the open sea. At this point in your journey, you realize the importance of trust among pirates. It sounds strange, criminals trusting each other, but pirate crews operated like tight-knit families. In a life where danger lurked everywhere, from naval patrols to storms and disease, trust could mean survival. The pirate code wasn't just about dividing loot fairly. It was about protecting the crew's interests and keeping peace among volatile personalities. You meet the quartermaster, a sharp-eyed man who watches everything. He explains the rules as he walks you through the ship. "Here, every man has a vote. We share the spoils equally except for the captain and specialist roles who get a little extra. But no one takes more than their share, or there's a mutiny." His tone is serious, but carries a hint of pride. This idea of democracy aboard a pirate ship was revolutionary for its time. While most navies operated with strict hierarchies where captains ruled with an iron fist, pirates shared power in a way that surprised many historians. The crew elected their captain and quartermaster, and they could remove them if they weren't doing a good job. It's as if a seafaring republic existed among the outlaws. But trust was fragile. Arguments over loot, leadership, or even personal slights could spark fierce disputes. You hear stories from seasoned pirates about crew fights breaking out over a stolen bottle of rum or accusations of cowardice in battle. Sometimes the disagreements turn deadly. A pirate ship could be a powder keg waiting for a spark, and yet the threat of punishment kept many in line. Mutineers and thieves could face severe consequences, from marooning on a deserted island to execution. The balance between freedom and discipline was delicate but essential. Without it, the pirate lifestyle would collapse. As you spend more time aboard, you notice the ship's daily rhythm. Despite the danger and lawlessness, there's order in the chaos. Sailors have duties: maintaining the ship, keeping watch, cleaning, and preparing for battles or raids. You even see pirates taking care of injured crew and sharing stories over mugs of grog in the evenings. Speaking of battles, you begin to learn about pirate tactics. Not just the fierce cannon fire, but the psychological warfare that kept many fights from ever starting. The black flag, the threatening shouts, and the deadly reputation were all weapons in their arsenal. Historians still argue whether these tactics were planned meticulously or grew naturally out of survival instincts. Some scholars suggest pirates used intimidation because they lacked the numbers or firepower to engage in long battles. Others believe the fearsome reputation was cultivated deliberately to avoid unnecessary violence and loss. Either way, the result was the same. Many merchant ships surrendered without a fight. The pirates didn't want to spill blood, they wanted treasure. They understood that a successful raid was about minimizing risk while maximizing reward. One day, you witness a dramatic example of this. A merchant ship spots the pirate vessel on the horizon and raises the white flag almost immediately. The pirate captain accepts the surrender, but demands a quick inspection. The merchant captain nervously shows the cargo hold filled with spices and precious metals. The pirates load their loot and prepare to leave. You notice the quartermaster handing the merchant captain a small piece of parchment, a receipt that guarantees the ship won't be attacked again. This strange custom helps avoid conflicts between pirate crews and keeps trade routes somewhat stable. It's an ironic twist. Even pirates respected certain unwritten rules to protect their business. As your journey continues, you hear whispers about notorious pirate captains like Blackbeard and Calico Jack. Their reputations aren't just based on brutality, but also on their ability to command loyalty and inspire fear. These leaders knew how to use flags, intimidation, and psychological tricks to control the seas. Blackbeard, for instance, was infamous for his terrifying appearance and dramatic tactics. He lit slow-burning fuses under his hat to create a smoky halo, making him look like a ghost or demon. His ship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, flew a black flag with a skeleton holding a spear and an hourglass, symbols of death and time running out. Despite his fearsome image, Blackbeard was also a shrewd negotiator. He often accepted surrender quickly and spared crews who complied, understanding that killing unnecessarily hurt his business. His legend grew, not just from violence, but from the careful balance of fear and restraint. Calico Jack, another legendary figure, was famous for the design of his flag, a skull with crossed swords beneath it, which became an enduring symbol of piracy. He was less ruthless than Blackbeard, but still commanded respect through clever use of symbols and daring raids. Your time aboard the pirate ship opens your eyes to the complexity of piracy. It wasn't just mindless violence. It was a harsh, dangerous world where survival depended on cunning, courage, and sometimes cooperation. The flags and symbols were tools in a larger game of power, trust, and reputation. As night falls over the restless sea, you lie in your hammock listening to the creak of the ship and the distant call of a night bird. You think about how this world of pirates, their flags, their codes, their strange blend of democracy and danger, feels both foreign and oddly familiar. In the quiet darkness, you realize the pirate story is more than just adventure and bloodshed. It's about how people create order in chaos, how fear can be a tool, and how even outlaws need rules to survive. The wind shifts, and with it, so does your journey. The pirate flag overhead snaps to attention, bold as ever, but now you recognize its power beyond cloth and color. It's not just a warning, it's a brand. And tonight, as the ship sails into a port that barely appears on most maps, you begin to understand the strange economy of fear and favor that keeps piracy alive. Ports were supposed to be safe havens. For regular sailors, they offered a chance to rest, restock, and repair. But for pirates, ports were trickier. Some were hostile, full of naval patrols and merchants eager to report any familiar black flag. Others were hidden gems, secretive inlets, corrupt colonial towns, or unofficial havens where the rules bent just enough to let pirates drink their rum and spend their gold. You're docked at one such place now, a sleepy, humid cove nestled between two rocky hills, known by whispered names like Dead Man's Welcome or the Whispering Bay. No one agrees on what to call it, and frankly, no one really cares. It exists on no proper chart, but somehow every pirate from Havana to Nassau seems to know exactly where it is. As you step ashore, the ground feels soft, like it's been soaked in centuries of spilled rum and secrets. The port smells of salt, sweat, and roasted goat. Lanterns swing from half-broken poles, and music drifts from the taverns, offbeat, off-key, and perfect. This is where the pirate life opens up, not just with gunpowder and sails, but with commerce, strange alliances, and backroom deals. You follow your quartermaster into a crooked tavern called the Limp Mermaid. Inside, the noise is overwhelming. Laughter, arguments, a man playing a tin whistle with his nose. But what draws your attention isn't the chaos. It's the fact that at 3 different tables, pirates are negotiating, not fighting, not drinking, negotiating. That's when it really hits you. Piracy isn't just violence, it's business. At one table, a pirate crew is brokering a deal with a local merchant. The pirate offers barrels of stolen silk in exchange for repairs and powder. The merchant haggles hard, pretending he doesn't know the silk is stolen, even though everyone in the room knows exactly where it came from. It's all a game, and the rules made up on the spot. At another table, two pirate captains discuss the use of a shared flag. Yes, shared. Sometimes captains would fly the same distinctive design to create a united identity, like a franchise. Historians still argue whether this was a sign of loose alliances or just lazy branding. But one thing's clear. If people fear your version of the flag, others might want to rent that reputation. Imagine that, renting terror like a fast food chain rents its logo. You overhear one grizzled old captain say, "A black flag's a promise, not a threat." The man he's talking to nods slowly. It's the kind of thing that sounds profound after your third mug of spiced grog. Later that night, you ask your quartermaster about these flag-sharing arrangements. He scratches his beard and says, "Sometimes we all raise the same skull. Send a message. One flag, many teeth." So yes, pirates, even the opportunists, turned even their reputations into currency. You watch as coins change hands, as old grudges are mended with claps on the back, and as new alliances are forged over fire-roasted oysters. No contracts, no witnesses. Just a few nods, maybe a splash of rum on the deal to seal it. It's messy, but it works, most of the time. Yet, even in this space of pirate diplomacy, there's an undercurrent of tension. Everyone's smiling, but no one puts their back to the door. Daggers are hidden in bootstraps. Trust is thin, stretched taut across the room like a ship's rigging. Because despite all this coordination, betrayal was still common. You hear tales of crews double-crossing each other over plunder, of pirates tipping off navies for a lighter sentence, of captured pirates turning king's evidence, giving testimony against their crewmates in exchange for a pardon. Historians debate how widespread this really was, but one thing's certain. Paranoia was baked into the pirate life. That's why many pirate crews voted on every big decision. That's why flags had to say something clear. That's why you never drank too much in a strange port with too much gold in your pocket. And that's when you see her. In the far corner of the tavern, a pirate captain sits in the shadows. Her hat is wide-brimmed, her boots polished, and she's surrounded by a few quiet crew members, all watching the room. She doesn't talk much, just gestures once, and her quartermaster stands to leave. Later, you learn her name is Captain Maribel Crane, and her flag is feared across the southern Caribbean. A silver hourglass dripping red sand over crossed daggers. It's not flashy, it's not loud, but sailors recognize it instantly. It means you've got one chance. One. She's known for taking surrender. Just once. Refuse, and she burns you. Comply, and she lets you go, cargo and all, but never twice. One merchant ship made the mistake of resisting her, then surrendering the next time. That ship's mast now hangs nailed to a cliff above a different hidden port, scorched with her emblem. Her flag became a story, one passed in whispers by merchant crews. If the red sand starts falling, don't hesitate. It's not just terror, it's branding. Effective and emotional, unforgettable branding. You start to wonder how many of the pirate flags you've seen, the bleeding hearts, the hourglasses, the skeletons dancing with spears, are really just primitive PR campaigns. Symbols that tell you exactly what to expect, so the pirates don't have to shout. Surrender or die. One chance. No mercy. Or maybe We'll treat you fairly, if you play fair. Each flag is a negotiation in cloth. And here's the strange part. Many of these designs were probably not made at sea. Flags were often created in ports like this, by local tailors paid under the table. Some were even stitched with silk stolen in previous raids. It's fashion turned into fear. You laugh quietly to yourself, imagining a pirate ordering flags like they're choosing outfits for a fancy ball. I'll take 2 skull and crossbones, 1 bleeding dagger, and maybe something with a flaming heart for special occasions. Fringe historians even suggest some flags were borrowed from earlier privateers or local cultic symbols. There's a half-baked theory that one flag with a winged skeleton was inspired by a Masonic funeral banner. Is that true? Hard to say, but it adds to the mythos. And pirates, you're realizing, loved mythos. You fall asleep that night in a hammock strung up between 2 palm trees just outside the tavern. The stars are so bright they look painted on. Somewhere nearby, a couple of crewmen are arguing about the best kind of powder to pack in a flintlock. A lizard chirps. You pull your hat over your eyes. And as you drift off, you realize that surrender at sea was only one part of the game. The rest was played here, in smoky taverns and whispered promises, in the silent language of flags. Because when 2 pirate ships saw each other on the water, they didn't always fire their cannons. Sometimes they recognized the flag, sometimes they lowered their weapons, and sometimes, without a single shot, they raised a mug of grog on deck, saluting not the skulls or swords, but the stories those flags carried. By now, your sea legs are steady. The roll of the deck no longer rattles your knees, and the shriek of gulls over a rotten barrel of salt fish barely earns a glance. You're not a fresh face anymore. Not on this ship, not in the strange universe that pirates made for themselves. A drifting world of power, survival, and spectacle. And tonight, as sails unfurl under moonlight and your ship glides from port, you begin to understand one final crucial layer of pirate flag waving: the art of the bluff. Pirates, for all their grit and gunpowder, were often master performers. The ocean was their stage, their crew, the actors, their ship, a costume, and their flags. Pure, high-stakes theater. You don't just fight with cannons, after all. You fight with expectation. The captain stands beside you, watching the black waves churn. Sometimes, he says, his voice low and amused, we raise the Jolly Roger before we even know if we'll attack. He glances sideways. It's not always about what we'll do. It's about what they think we'll do. And there it is, the bluff. You had thought flags were simple declarations. Surrender or die, no mercy, time's up. But as the ship changes course toward a thin silver line on the horizon, the captain orders a very different flag to go up. The red flag, the infamous no quarter signal. Now, here's where things get messy. Historians argue endlessly about what red flags actually meant. In some reports, they signaled no mercy, total annihilation. In others, they were warning flares. We're serious. Don't make us prove it. Some ships reportedly used red to mean battle was inevitable, while others only raised it once they were already attacking. It's a classic example of historical ambiguity. No definitive flag code book survives. Everything depends on context, reputation, rumor, and luck. But back in your reality, on the creaking deck of this ship, the red flag flaps above you like a tongue dipped in blood. It's dramatic, it's terrifying, and, at least for now, it's completely fake. The ship you're approaching is a stout little merchant bark, hauling tobacco and salted meat. Not much of a challenge. The pirates don't even load the cannons. They don't need to. That red flag tells the merchant crew everything they need to know, or at least everything the pirates want them to believe. Through a spyglass, you see the reaction. Frantic sailors dashing across deck, cutting the wind from their sails, scrambling to hoist the white flag. Surrender. Immediate, unquestioning surrender. Not a single shot fired. No blood spilled. The flag did all the work. You feel a strange admiration bloom in your chest. Not for fear, but for elegance. It's like watching a magician pull a coin from thin air. The pirates stole that ship's cargo without even boarding it. The fear did the heavy lifting. This trickery wasn't rare. In fact, many pirates didn't start with the Jolly Roger at all. They approached looking like merchant vessels or friendly traders. Some even flew false national flags, a Spanish cross, a British ensign, a Dutch tricolor, anything to confuse their targets until it was too late to flee. Only at the final moment, when the escape route closed, did they raise the black or red banner. The reveal was theatrical. You can imagine it in slow motion. Crew yanking away a canvas cover, the black flag unfurling like a curtain drop, sabers drawn, cannons suddenly visible, masks gone. A chill would crawl over the targeted ship's deck. Panic. Chaos. Compliance. Boom. Another prize taken. Another story born. It worked so well that navies soon passed laws forbidding false flag operations. But pirates, being pirates, ignored them. Or worse, used those laws to their advantage. You hear a story from a grizzled boatswain named Jeb. "We flew a Dutch flag once," he says, chewing on a fishbone. "Merchant ship thought we were escorting. Let us pull alongside." Then he mimes the flag dropping with a flourish. They screamed louder than a kettle left on a volcano. Was it true? Maybe. Maybe not. That's the thing about pirate tales. They're part history, part bedtime warning, part stand-up comedy. And yet, even among these tricksters, certain boundaries existed. Some pirate crews refused to use false flags. They saw it as dishonorable. Others would never raise the red flag unless they meant it. Codes, both spoken and unspoken, governed the art of bluffing. You never knew which captain played fair and which one wore deceit like a second skin. The bluff was powerful, but it was also dangerous. If a pirate bluffed and got caught, pretending to be a merchant and then getting boarded by a Navy ship, the penalty was execution. No trial, no second chance. So it was a gamble. Every false flag was a coin toss with your neck on the line. You wonder what made pirates risk so much? Maybe it was the thrill. Maybe it was the payoff. Or maybe, as the quartermaster once told you with a wink, it's not a real bluff if there's no danger in it. Sometimes, though, the flag wasn't a bluff. It was a trap. One time, your ship encounters a vessel already flying a black flag. You tense, expecting a challenge. But the other ship sends no cannon fire, no boarding party, just drifts on the sea like a lost ghost. Your captain, curious, approaches, and only at the last moment do you realize it's not a pirate ship. It's a Navy ship in disguise, a bait trap. Naval crews had begun mimicking pirates to draw them in. Once the real pirates came close, the hidden cannons fired, and Marines swarmed aboard. Some called these operations honey ships, sweet on the outside, deadly underneath. Luckily, your captain senses the trick and veers away just in time. No engagement, just another narrow escape, another reminder that flags cut both ways. The sea doesn't reward certainty, It rewards perception. Later that week, you help stitch a new flag. The old one's worn, its bones faded, its heart less threatening than before. As you tug the needle through heavy cloth, you wonder how many hands across history have done the same, creating symbols meant to terrify, to bluff, or to survive. Pirates weren't just fighters. They were psychological engineers. Their real goal wasn't destruction. It was efficient. Why fire 12 cannons if one flag could end the battle before it began? Why risk wounds, disease, or death when fear could deliver the same treasure with less mess? That's the genius you're beginning to admire. Not greed, not the violence, but the understanding of how humans react. A skull can terrify, a red banner can paralyze, a clever lie can change the course of a ship or a life. And all of it starts with a flag. By now, the sun dips low again. Shadows stretch across the deck. Another successful day at sea. No blood spilled. The crew sings low songs and someone plays a soft fiddle tune, a lullaby for hardened criminals. You sit with your back against a barrel, listening to the rhythm of the ship, and it finally makes sense. Pirate flags weren't just threats. They were conversations. You speak to your enemies through them. You say, "We're coming," or "You're done," or "We might be bluffing," or not. You let them imagine the worst. And often, that's enough. Because humans fear what they don't know far more than what they do. And a flag, when used just right, is a mystery with sharp teeth. Night falls again, and by now the rhythm of sea life is stitched into your bones. You know when the wind shifts by the snap of the mainsail. You know the smell of a coming storm better than your own scent. You've watched men bluff with flags, cheat death with timing, and bend history with symbols stitched from canvas. But tonight, as the deck creaks beneath you and the stars scatter like powdered chalk across the black sky, you're about to uncover the weirdest truth of all. Sometimes pirates didn't even need flags to bluff. They just pretended they had them. That's right. They faked the bluff of the bluff. See, it turns out in the chaotic swirl of naval confusion, fear, and fog of war, rumor could fly faster than sailcloth. You start hearing tales, whispered during stew and grog, of pirates who never once raised a real Jolly Roger, but still built their reputation on it. One of the weirdest examples comes from a Dutch privateer named John Slippery van der Vos. The man allegedly had no official flag, not black, not red, not anything. Instead, he let others describe his terror. Survivors from his raids claimed they'd seen a flag with a red skull eating a baby, or a banner shaped like a noose that tightened in the wind. One sailor swore van der Vos had flown a canvas made from actual human skin. Historians still argue whether John ever used any of those flags. Most think the stories were exaggerations or outright fiction. But here's the catch. It didn't matter. The fear spread anyway. The idea of the flag was just as effective as the real thing. This is how pirates like van der Vos and others like the Frenchman L'Ollonais carved legends with sheer performance. L'Ollonais was famous for being so brutal, Spanish sailors would allegedly jump into the sea to avoid capture. Did he even bother with flags? Sometimes. But mostly, his reputation did the flag waving for him. Imagine that. Being so infamous that ships surrender just from seeing your silhouette. In fact, there's another lesser-known story of a Caribbean pirate named Black Sam, who supposedly had no need for a flag because he always approached singing loudly in Latin while his crew banged drums and hurled coconuts at the target ship. Bizarre? Yes, but it terrified people. They didn't know what kind of lunatic was coming at them, and that mystery was powerful. You start to realize that pirate tactics were as much about the stories people told as the symbols they waved. Back in your ship, someone suggests crafting a new kind of flag, something entirely outlandish with two heads and glowing red eyes. You joke about adding glitter or fake blood, but the quartermaster stops, thoughtful. That might work, he murmurs. Make 'em think we're cursed. You blink. Wait, is that a thing? Oh yes, the supernatural bluff. Some pirates intentionally cultivated mythical auras. They'd paint eyes on the bow of the ship, claim they spoke to sea spirits, or say their sails were cursed to never tear. Some wore amulets made from animal bones. A few captains, particularly in the South China Sea, instructed the crew to cry like banshees before boarding. This wasn't just theater, it was psychological warfare. If your enemy thinks you're not just a pirate, but a demon pirate, they're more likely to give up early or never fight at all. Historians still debate whether these supernatural flourishes were widespread or rare, but there are enough accounts to suggest they weren't just sailor gossip. Ships from Madagascar to Malacca sometimes flew flags with symbols that weren't human at all, twisting vines, serpents, symbols possibly borrowed from African tribal sigils or Polynesian totems. Some flags even incorporated silence as part of their bluff. You heard that right. Not screaming threats, not cannon roars, but eerily complete silence. One technique was to approach with sails down, not a single footstep on deck. No singing, no bell, not even the groan of an oar. Then, as the target ship panicked from the unnatural stillness, the pirates would raise the flag in one terrifying moment, surrounded by a hush that made it feel like death itself had come to call. It's genius when you think about it. Noise can be scary, sure, but silence? Silence is a chasm. You fill it with your own worst fears. Back on your current voyage, you begin to notice how the crew controls sound during different approaches. Sometimes they shout and laugh to seem overconfident. Other times, they go full ghost mode. No words. Just the creak of wood and the heavy whisper of sailcloth in the wind. And always, that final reveal of the flag. You see it differently now, not just as a warning or a demand. It's part of a ritual, the build-up, the moment of recognition, the tension as the target crew glances up, breath catches, decisions get made. It's choreography. It's a theater with stakes so high you can practically hear the heartbeat of history pulsing behind every stitch. But sometimes, the bluff backfires. There's a tale from the Indian Ocean about a pirate named Kalambu the Red, who supposedly flew a bright yellow flag with 3 smiling faces, each one dripping red paint from the mouth. It was meant to be grotesque, a mockery, but his intended victims, they thought it was funny. Instead of surrendering, they mocked him from the deck. One sailor even mooned Kalambu's ship before firing a warning shot. The bluff failed. The intimidation fizzled, and Kalambu, humiliated, fled without firing a shot. Moral of the story? Flags are powerful, but not foolproof. Sometimes the bluff misfires, sometimes people call it, and then you're left with nothing but the real thing: steel, fire, and risk. Still, the most successful pirates rarely had to go that far. They mastered not just symbols, but timing. When to appear, when to raise, when to hold back. In one haunting story, a ship was found adrift near the Bahamas. Crew vanished, sails intact, with only a black flag fluttering and the deck spotless. Some claim it was a plague ship, others insist it was a trap, A few even whisper it was a ghost vessel. The truth? Nobody knows. But it kept other pirates away for months. The flag did the job, even after death. It's in this shadowy space that pirate flags take on mythic dimensions. They're not just cloth anymore. They're stories, curses, identities. The Jolly Roger, for example, isn't a brand. It's an invitation to imagine terror, and whether or not the pirates actually deserved that terror. Whether they truly were as ruthless as the flag suggested? Well, historians still argue over that. Some believe pirates inflated their reputations deliberately, letting songs and sailor gossip do the heavy lifting. Others think naval reports exaggerated pirate cruelty to justify harsh retaliation. After all, it's easier to hang a man if you call him a monster first. But here you are, standing beneath one of those very flags, its edges frayed, its skull fading, but still commanding respect. And you can't help but feel its weight, not just physical, but emotional. That flag has frightened hundreds, perhaps thousands. It's been raised over stolen cargo, dropped in surrender, stitched in secret, and hoisted in fog. It's flown during lies, during fights, and sometimes during nothing at all, just to keep people guessing. It is the flag of a story, and every time it rises, another tale begins. The bluff, you realize, isn't just a trick. It's a language, and whether your flag flutters in truth, in terror, or in trickery, the sea always listens. You can't sleep tonight. The sea is too calm. No creaking hull, no gulls cackling in the dark. Just the long, low hush of tide water against wood, like the world is holding its breath. You climb up to the quarterdeck, where the lookout is humming something slow and wordless. Below you, the sails flutter weakly, only half full. The ship drifts rather than sails. It's peaceful, unnerving, because you've learned by now, calm is never just calm. It's a pause between stories, a setup before a surprise. A pirate, of all people, learns not to trust silence. And tonight, silence wants to teach you something new. Because while you've studied how flags were used as threats, bluffs, and myths, there's still one major trick up the pirate's sleeve. Sometimes they used flags to pretend to be someone else entirely. That's right. Welcome to the deadly art of false colors. The term might sound like a 2000s pop-punk album, but in piracy, it meant life or death. False colors were fake national flags flown specifically to fool a target ship, to look friendly when you were anything but. You're a Spanish galleon carrying gold bars back from Panama. You spot a British merchant ship on the horizon, looks harmless enough, maybe even helpful. They're flying the Union Jack. You let them approach. Too late, you realize the crew isn't wearing proper naval uniforms. The ship is moving a little too fast. Something's off. Then, just yards away, the British flag drops and is replaced by a black flag with a grinning skull. Surprise, you're about to lose everything. Pirates use this tactic constantly. In fact, it was often more successful than using a proper Jolly Roger. Why? Because a Jolly Roger ends the negotiation. A false flag begins it, or at least makes your victim think there's going to be one. Think of it like a cat pretending to be a pile of laundry. It's funny until it pounces. You learn from the older sailors that this trick was technically legal, at least by pirate standards, as long as you raised your true flag before firing the first shot. Now, whether pirates actually followed that rule, historians still argue about it. There are dozens of cases where attackers never dropped their false flag until long after the smoke cleared. But it gave them an edge. The closer you could get before your victim got spooked, the better. One famous tale involves Bartholomew Roberts, yes, Black Bart again, who once tricked a Portuguese treasure ship into surrendering by flying a Portuguese flag and mimicking naval signal patterns. The ship's captain reportedly welcomed Roberts aboard, thinking he was a military escort. Oops. Another account, this one from the Mediterranean, tells of pirates using multiple flags at once, each stitched onto small poles ready to be swapped like costume changes. As soon as they spotted a target, they'd raise the most convincing nationality, French, Dutch, Ottoman, whoever looked friendliest. Some even went beyond flags and staged entire theatrical performances. One pirate crew in the early 1700s dressed up in borrowed merchant clothes, covered their cannons with tarps, and pretended to be a ship full of traveling musicians. Legend says they even had someone playing a hurdy-gurdy on deck. Did it work? Yep. Their target let them get within grappling distance. Then they dropped the act, hoisted a black flag, and boarded. It was brilliant and completely unfair. Still, this sort of trickery wasn't always limited to ships on the open sea. In port towns, pirates sometimes switched flags just before entering harbor. They'd sail in under a neutral flag, say Dutch, and act like traveling merchants. Then, once docked and settled, they'd raid from within, stealing from warehouses or sabotaging other ships by night. One notorious case happened in Port Royal, Jamaica. A vessel flew a neutral Danish flag, claiming to carry salted fish. Local authorities let them anchor. By morning, 3 warehouses were burning, and half the pirate crew had vanished with crates of gunpowder. Authorities were furious. But really, what could they do? Arrest a flag? That's what makes this whole system so slippery. You realize that flags are just symbols, bits of stitched fabric. But they change everything because people believe in them. We see a flag and instantly assign it meaning friend, enemy, warning, peace. Pirates knew that. They relied on it. And sometimes they used it to strike without lifting a finger. Here's a strange example. There's a tale from the West African coast about a pirate ship that dropped anchor off a small French colony. They didn't attack, didn't raise any flag at all, just sat there for days, letting the settlers grow more and more paranoid. Rumors spread. They're flying no colors. That means they've got something to hide. Another sailor swears he saw a skull-shaped lantern glowing at night. One woman claimed she dreamed the pirates had wings. Finally, the entire village evacuated before the pirates even came ashore. By the time the crew wandered up the beach, they found fresh supplies, tools, and even barrels of gunpowder just left behind. Now that's power. But of course, not every story ends with such poetic success. Flying false colors carried serious risk, especially if you got caught. Being caught under a friendly flag while committing piracy meant no trial, no mercy. You weren't just a thief, you were now considered a war criminal. In 1704, a pirate named Captain Quinn was captured off the coast of Barbados. His mistake? Flying the British flag while raiding a Dutch merchant convoy. The Dutch authorities were so furious they executed every officer on Quinn's ship. Not just hanged. They were hanged, drawn, and quartered. A nasty, medieval-style punishment designed to send a message. What was the message? Flags matter, even when you're lying. In fact, so many pirates used false flags that some merchant ships started doubling up their watch crews, especially on flag recognition. They studied not just the flag itself, but how it was raised. A poorly timed tug, a delay in hoisting, or a wrinkle in etiquette could mean the difference between safety and slaughter. It got so bad that some navies issued flag passwords. secret signals only legitimate ships would know. If your flag was real, you'd flash a specific lantern pattern or fire a harmless salute. Pirates didn't always have the right answer, and that could expose them. You remember how back in Section 3 we talked about how pirates turned flags into performance art? Well, this is the other side of the curtain, the spycraft. Flags became tools of espionage, disguise, even diplomacy. A good pirate captain was part tactician, part actor, part con artist. You didn't just sail, you pretended to sail as someone else. And when the wind shifted and your mask fell away, that's when the real flag came out. That's when the story turned. One last tale for tonight, and it's a good one. There was a pirate, never named in any official log, who roamed the Red Sea in the late 1600s. He was known only as the Weaver. Why? Because he never reused the same flag twice. Every attack, every approach, even in defense, he raised a different design. Some borrowed, some handmade. His crew stitched them at night under candlelight. One flag had a flaming fish. Another had a green skeleton playing dice. One showed two hands locked in a handshake, but dripping with blood. No one could predict him. Merchant ships couldn't agree on what he looked like, what colors he flew, or even which nation he belonged to. Some said he was Dutch, others swore he was Persian. One sailor thought he was a woman in disguise. The Weaver never stayed still long enough for anyone to find out. And then, one day, his ship was found wrecked on a coral reef, abandoned. On the deck, a flag. Just one. It showed an empty hand, palm up, fingers curled slightly, like someone asking a question. To this day, no one knows what it meant. But that's the thing, right? Maybe it didn't need to mean anything. Maybe that was the final bluff, an open hand where you expected a sword. And that, you realize, is the greatest pirate trick of all. To make people see what they fear, even if it was never there. You sit at the edge of your bunk, lanterns swinging gently above, casting shadows that flicker like ghost sails across the wooden beams. By now you've crossed storms and salt winds, seen cannon thunder and captains bluff, and followed the thread of flags through myths, fear, cunning, and survival. But before you roll up the map on this story, there's one last wind to chase. What happened after the pirates? What happened when the flags came down? Because, believe it or not, the golden age of piracy didn't last forever. In fact, by the 1730s, those iconic flags, the grinning skulls, the hourglasses, the bleeding hearts, began to disappear, and they didn't go out with a bang. They went out with papers. You watch as the world changes, slowly but unstoppably. The oceans become less wild. The powers of Europe, Britain, Spain, France, stop fighting each other quite so much and start focusing on trade. Colonies grow, navies grow faster, and governments, fed up with the endless cost of chasing pirates around the globe, decide it's cheaper to offer pardons. Yes, pardons. Letters from kings and queens saying, "All right, scallywag, come home, surrender, and we won't hang you." Some pirates accept, some don't. But enough do that the pirate threat begins to shrink, especially as rewards increase for turning them in. Suddenly, the pirate lifestyle isn't thrilling. It's just dangerous and short. And with fewer pirates come fewer pirate flags. A black flag flapping in the wind, once a symbol of terror, becomes something else entirely. A memory. But not a quiet one. Because the image of the Jolly Roger outlives the ships that flew it. It gets painted on tavern signs, carved into coins, drawn in children's books. And of course, it gets mythologized. You hear the old stories still echoing in the sailor bars and under lantern-lit docks. How Blackbeard tied smoking fuses in his beard and frightened entire navies. How Charles Vane burned flags instead of flying them. How Anne Bonny once stabbed a man for touching her red sash. And the flags? They grow bigger in the telling, bolder. Suddenly, every pirate had a custom flag, even ones who probably didn't. Historians still argue whether some of the most famous designs ever existed at all. Take Calico Jack's crossed swords. Did he really fly it? Or did it come later, stitched onto his legend like a tailor fixing a frayed cuff? Or Blackbeard's devil-horned skeleton? There's only one surviving eyewitness account that mentions it. No sketches, no flags recovered from his ship. Was it real, or the world's first viral meme? But none of that matters to you right now, because the point isn't whether every flag was authentic. The point is what they meant. Pirates weren't just criminals, they were storytellers. Every black banner they raised said, "This ship is not part of your world. Your kings and currencies mean nothing here. We are our own law." It was rebellion stitched into sailcloth, a kind of freedom, even if it came with blood. And that freedom found ways to echo long after the cannon stopped. You begin to notice something weird. The pirate flag, once feared by all nations, begins to be adopted by everyone else. Fast forward to the 1800s. Independence movements in the Caribbean start flying black flags as revolutionary symbols. Not pirate flags exactly, but inspired by them. Bold, simple, defiant. Then, in the early 1900s, early motorcyclists, basically leather-clad cowboys on wheels, started painting skulls on their jackets. When asked why, one old biker growls, "Same reason the pirates did. Makes people nervous." By the 1980s, punk bands slapped Jolly Rogers onto their album covers. A new generation uses pirate symbols not to steal gold, but to steal attention, attitude. Even the word pirate itself morphs. Now there are radio pirates broadcasting without permission, software pirates hacking and distributing code, file pirates torrenting movies with suspiciously good subtitles. And yes, each one of these groups borrows the flag. Some draw new versions, a floppy disk with bones, a radio antenna, a laughing emoji with an eye patch. The meaning evolves, but the message stays the same. We are outside your rules. You think back to something odd from Section 11. That forgotten prisoner who scrawled a Jolly Roger on the inside of a cell wall right before the rope. Why would someone facing death still draw that flag? Not for threat, not for fear, but for pride, maybe for legacy. Because while flags are made of cloth, the ideas behind them aren't. They're made of defiance, drama, identity. And pirate flags, those fluttering, terrifying little banners, became the first global brand of rebellion. You can't name many merchant ship flags from the 1700s, but you know the skull and crossbones, don't you? You'd recognize it anywhere, even now. Which brings us to the strangest twist of all. In modern times, some navies began flying the Jolly Roger again. Not as pirates, but as professionals. The British Royal Navy, for example. During World War I, a British submarine returned to base with a small black pirate flag waving proudly. It was meant as a joke. Their mission had gone under the radar, like pirates. But the admiral wasn't amused. He called it a disgrace to the Navy. The crew didn't care. Next mission? They flew it again. By the end of World War II, it became tradition. Each successful stealth mission got you the right to fly the Jolly Roger. custom decorated with symbols representing what you'd done. Torpedoes for sunk ships, daggers for assassinations, mines for sabotage. In other words, the pirate flag came full circle. What began as an outlaw signal of terror became a badge of elite pride. A wink, a legacy. Now, you might wonder, isn't that ironic? Isn't it odd that the world spent decades hunting pirates, then turned around and borrowed their banners? Yes, it is. But humans are like that. We fear what we don't understand, then we try to own it, then we tell stories about it, and eventually we hang it on our bedroom wall like a poster, or print it on a coffee mug, or get it tattooed on our forearm. Because some part of us will always admire the outlaw, the one who sails outside the map, beyond the rules, asking nothing but the wind and a little luck. That's what pirate flags gave the world. Not just fear, but freedom. So tonight, as the sea hushes and the sails go slack, you lean back and close your eyes. You picture a black flag rising slowly on a crooked mast. You picture the silence it brings, the shiver across the water. You picture the stories still being told about ships that never came home, names whispered over tankards, legends stitched into the seams of history. And somewhere, maybe just over the next wave, there's still a ship drifting quietly under a borrowed moon. No flag at all, just waiting for someone to come close. Because the most dangerous thing a pirate can fly isn't a skull, it's nothing.